So spring practice is on spring break, but who's been creating the most buzz so far?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama AHSA Radio Network's Luke Robinson. That's me. Bama internet legend Jimmy Stein. That's him. I'm having to stop myself.
We'll come up with something better than that. That's it's too immense.
It's
too immense.
It's
I'm
heavy
not
as the crown, Jimmy.
Okay.
This episode is brought to you by Nissan. I want to thank Nissan for being a sponsor. I want to thank you every day for being here every day. I thank you newbies for being here today, and thank everybody for being here and making us your first listen every day. So, Jimmy, we got Mark Bowman up there at the top, but I am going to start with players creating a buzz in spring break because I think that's a little bit more on topic right now. So, who's really killing it out there?
I hear a few things. Obviously, there's only been 3 practices. They are not practices in pads with full football, so you can't take anything too seriously. But in terms of like some positivity that I'm hearing, I'll start with Keelan Russell. You know, Keelan Russell is obviously showing up with a ton of hype. I don't know that you can get any more hype than him unless his name was Keelan Russell Manning. But Keelan is off to a good start and impressing people. That's number one. What about Lotzier Brooks? Also impressing people. I think Lotzier's been a thing early on. That's fun. Jalen Hale, I hear, is not only healthy, but practicing with an edge. He missed a lot of football. That's a name I've heard. How about this on the offensive line? Kind of a surprising name because I thought this guy probably needed some time in the incubator, but Jackson Lloyd has impressed off the bat, the offensive tackle from California. Alabama needs depth at offensive tackle, so it's a good thing that Jackson Lloyd has shown up good. Also, here's some good things about Olas Alanen, which is great. It's kind of time for him to make a move. On the defensive side of the ball.
Wait a minute. I want to stop you because
Sure.
I do want to give us a little bit of kudos. You know,
of course, we need that.
We need it, bro. It's been rough. But I think that you and I loved Lotzier Brooks before everybody else did.
Yeah, we did.
I really believe that.
First time we watched the tape, we were.
Now, you guys, if you listen to the show, you know that when sometimes Alabama will take a commitment from a guy, and we're not going to come on here and say Alabama shouldn't have taken this guy, but read between the lines. You know when we're not super fired up about somebody, right?
Longtime listeners should be able to pick up on some stuff. We're not going to dog kids because that's just not the right thing to do. And by the way, it's dumb too.
It is dumb.
Hey, I'll be the first to admit, that was a long time ago. I was practically a little kid at the age of 25. But I remember when we took a commitment from this offensive tackle from Mobile named Chris Samuels, and I'm like, what are they doing? I mean,
Jimmy, based on the recent antics of Chad Baker-Mazara, I don't even know what 25 is anymore. If it's a kid, if it's an adult, I don't know.
I was a youngster the age of Chad Baker-Mazara. No, I'm just saying I've been wrong about players and people that are adamant, oh, this 17-year-old's never going to be any good. I don't understand people that are that adamant, that are that willing to be terribly wrong on the negative end. It boggles my mind a little bit.
So, but
we're just saying, Lotzier, you're right. People should be able to read between the lines a little bit. If we're not quite as over the top excited, maybe that means something.
If we don't do like an emergency podcast, chances are we don't love them.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, chances are, it's not a foolproof method, but Lotzier Brooks, you and I loved him from the jump. And now I'll admit, when we first got involved, I was like, eh. And then all we did was watch some of his videos. We're like, why isn't this guy a bigger thing? This is nuts. And honestly, there were some folks saying y'all are nuts. Y'all are just sunshine pumping. I get it. Hey, we're a Bama podcast. We're going to try and, like I just said, we're not going to tell you when somebody's awful, even though you should be able to pick up on cues that we think he's awful.
Well, Alabama doesn't take. I mean, I remember being in a meeting one time where, like, Jimmy, you can't be excited. Don't be excited about every player. And I'm like, Alabama doesn't offer crap. It's Alabama. They recruit. We just signed the second or third best recruiting class in the nation. I think it's okay to be pretty high on kids that Alabama takes.
Yeah.
Really, the batting average has been really good, and these guys are highly hyped, not by us, but by others before they get to us. Now, what you're bringing up about Lotzier Brooks is true, because at the time Alabama took him, he was a low 3-star, wasn't even ranked by some services. We were over the top considering where he was at that time, and even is still underranked. But generally, you're kind of hard pressed to find Alabama in the last 17 plus years now, taking kids that I think is a huge mistake. Now, that happened during the Shula era, and I did question it at times. Obviously I was a tad before the podcast, but I did in my somewhere on the internet was questioning.
Personal note, how much fun would you and I have had with a podcast in the Shula era when we were on like a semi-private message board, and there were times I wanted to virtually choke you because you would tell me, look, and it makes sense. I know where you're going. You're like, I'm an Alabama fan. I'm always going to pull for Alabama to win. And you always spun it positive. And I was like, but can you not see how bad Mike Shula is? It's right there. The evidence is right there.
Also about taking specific player. I do recall taking specific players in the Shula era where I was always telling people, look, when you beat Southern Miss for a player, maybe that player, Southern Miss does sign players that end up NFL players and all-time greats. But if you take 25 Southern Miss players, you know what you are? You're Southern Miss.
Southern Miss.
Yeah. And that's I remember saying that a lot, during that era. Now, Alabama obviously had, some recruiting handicaps during that period of time. But yeah, since the Saban era started, it's kind of hard pressed to find kids that are like, what are they doing taking this guy? Now, there's always questions about, look, if you're only going to take 3 receivers and then you take a receiver, it's fine to say, why'd they take this guy when you still have A, B, and C still out there? But those are fun conversations to me. To me, those aren't so much mistakes as they are the same conversations that they have in the staff room, frankly.
Okay, so Lotzier Brooks, you and I, we believe in the kid. And look, there was a video, and again, it's 3 practices, but there was a video that had him lining up with like the dudes that you think are going to be starting. And again, it's a practice. It's the 3rd practice of spring. Who the heck knows? But it's one of those things where you go, oh, that's an interesting development.
I had somebody tell me, boy, Lotzier Brooks looks good out there. And then like an hour later, I read like a quote from Bray Hubbard himself being interviewed where Bray Hubbard said, Lotzier Brooks is good. So yeah, I think that's getting around. And now, what kind of opportunity is he going to have to play? I don't know. When you have Ryan and Germ and Horton, who's going to play a big role, period. Jalen Hale's going to play. Cole Adams was a starter last year before he was hurt. I think a lot of people forget that. There's also going to be a push to see Jalen Mbakwe.
When we talked about receivers the other day, we were talking about how deep the receiver room was. You can look up the pod. It was a few days ago. I think we just forgot to mention Jalen Mbakwe. And that may be a mistake, but I'm going to say this, that rightly or wrongly, and probably more for the reason of the devil you don't know versus the devil you do, I'm kind of more excited about Lotzier Brooks than Jalen Mbakwe right now.
Yep. I get that.
I feel guilty because Mbakwe stuck around at Bama. We obviously want him here. I want him here. I know what kind of an athlete he is. I got to see him play in state championship games. He's amazing.
Yeah.
But
I'm picking my words.
He did play defensive back last year.
I'm picking my words carefully here.
Yeah. Purposely.
Picking my words carefully. What I'm saying is, I'm not saying moving to receiver is a mistake. I'm not saying that at all. Don't say for one second. But what I am saying is, I hope 2 years from now, or 3 years from now, we aren't saying moving to wide receiver was a mistake.
No.
You know, because
Yep.
there's a difference. I don't think it was a mistake. I hope I don't think that 3 years from now. Because I say that because I was convinced after watching him play corner last year that he was an NFL cornerback and was going to be a pro football cornerback in fairly short order. And now he moved. So, I can be kind of nervous about such things.
I don't know why it reminded me of this, but when you said, I'm not saying this, but I don't want to be saying it later. It reminds me of a Simpsons episode when Homer was stuck on an island and he had found these toads that he licks to get a high from. And Marge finally got in touch with him via satellite phone. And she was like, "Are you licking toads?" He was like, "I'm not licking toads." I don't know why that has anything to do with what you said. I just wanted to use that. I like it. The Armada Team of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 25 Nissan Armada. Each week, our Locked On College basketball experts are picking one team that stands apart. From top-seeded stars to the unexpected upset, these guys showcase the strength and sheer power needed to push their team forward. This week's Armada and clear-cut team of the week is the Duke Blue Devils. John Shire's team, led by National Player of the Year candidate Cooper Flagg, just ripped through the ACC going 19-1. The Blue Devils were plus 434 points in ACC games, the largest point differential by a power conference team in the league play since Kentucky in 53-54. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer. That's exactly what the Duke Blue Devils have done here. It's clear that our team of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in all-new Nissan Armada or any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Since we never got to the defense because I cut you off, and the whole really, and we hadn't even gotten to Mark Bowman, who's the top of the list yet, but we do have to talk about Cam Calhoun. He might be creating the most buzz
maybe
of spring. He seriously might be.
Yeah. And I think playing a bigger role than I imagined on the day that Alabama, I'm going to say the day Alabama got him, I'm like, we just took a starting cornerback from someone, because, this is a starting corner at Utah. And I'm like, why would he? But the number 3 corner played a ton last year. Think of all the snaps Deshaun Jones played before he moved to Husky and then was basically replaced by Mbakwe as the 3rd corner. And Mbakwe played a ton. Zay Mincy was playing at corner some snaps before he moved to safety. So Alabama, Womack's not afraid to substitute at DB. And I see the 3rd corner playing a lot of snaps and particularly Cam Calhoun earning those snaps. The 3rd safety who I see today is Zay Mincy. I think he plays a lot of snaps. But Cam has, here's an interesting thing, about Cam also personality-wise. I hear, and I know how rare is this for a DB, I hear he's a talker, but I hear he's kind of a comic talker, and that he doesn't stop talking, and that he talks on the field, and it doesn't stop on the field. He'll talk in the locker room and on the sidelines and in class and probably in his sleep. He's a talker.
How old is he?
Younger than 25, when I had a very poor take on Chris Samuels. Younger than Chad Baker-Mazara.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, younger than Chad Baker-Mazara. He's a talker too, from what I hear.
Yeah, he's more of a doer than
yeah. Sometimes the dog, he's the dog that bites, not just the dog that barks.
Jimmy, I'm going to ask this one more time because people have been asking in almost every podcast that we do. Did you cut yourself shaving with a helicopter blade?
It was a bad cut, and then I reopened it 2 days later. Yeah.
It's the worst.
It's been a thing.
If there's anything worse than being a grown man, 25 and up, and cutting yourself shaving in like a weird spot, which I've done because I don't use a mirror.
Yeah.
And or like on your lip, or to have, a pimple or something when you're like 52
Mhm.
and you're like, I don't even remember what to do with these things anymore, but anyway, so
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
some
When I
things.
was specifically like, okay, keep the razor away from the lip, keep the razor away from, and then it's like, what are you drunk at 5:30 in the morning?
Okay, so let's talk Mark Bowman now. This is
Oh
a
my
tight end
gosh.
prospect from modern day. We have some modern day dudes on the team. We've
Mhm.
talked about this in the past. I don't think we've given him enough love. I also don't think it feels like we're giving this lip service, no pun intended,
Ugh,
in terms of
boom.
in terms of Alabama's chances. I think they're better than we think. I'm not saying he's committing,
Mhm.
but I'm not saying he's committing.
Yeah, Homer. Yeah. Here's the thing. I invoked, and this is where I'm about to double down on a mistake as often. I invoked the name in talking about Mark Bowman the other day. I'm like, he's a lot like as Brock Bowers. That's what I said the other day. And then as immediately as I said it, I'm like, boy, I shouldn't ever say Brock Bowers when talking about a high school tight end from California. Well, I watched the tape again, and you know what? Heck yeah, I should have said Brock Bowers. This kid's unreal. I mean, I think, no, I know this. That's the best 10th grade tape of any tight end I've ever seen in my life. I've watched a lot, and I've watched a lot of tape, and I'm pretty good about the recall. Not awesome, but pretty good about the recall. That's the best 10th grade tight end tape I've ever seen. And because not only is he great as a receiver, there's some real physicality there too. And I have a hard time believing. Now, I haven't seen Brock Bowers' 10th grade tape. I ought to go try to hunt it down. There's no way it's any better than what Bowman looked like. He checks every box, but not just a check mark, Luke. It's an A plus that you just throw in every box with him. This kid is a freak, and I think Brock Bowers is actually a really good comp here. And but boy, his recruitment's tough. Of course, he's considering Georgia because I'm not the only one saying he looks like Brock Bowers. Of course, he's considering Oregon because they're a major recruiting force these days. He's from Southern Cal, so of course he's considering Southern Cal. And why not throw in Texas? When you're one of the most highly recruited players in the country. How unbelievable is it, Luke? If I told, hey, look, a tight end's not a receiver or a running back. He reclassifies as a line of scrimmage player, reclassifies, and is the number two player, the number two tight end in the country, though he's a year younger than everyone else. That's crazy. But then you watch the tape and you're like, yep, yep.
Um, it is interesting about the modern day Alabama. I mean, is it a pipeline?
Yeah.
It's sort of an unfinished pipeline. There was some protesting of the pipeline, but some got through. Um, so what is it? Do you think? I mean, now for tight ends, I can see it because you would think Keelan DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and just throwing the ball all over the place and all that. But I mean, what is the allure? I mean, I get it because I'm an Alabama guy, not just a university of. I love the state. I don't want to be anywhere else. I think Alabama's got everything as a state. And now some people love California and they got the fantastic everything, but they also have some catastrophes and they also have some a political climate that is unique. And but I'm just trying to understand:
Yeah.
is it the University of Alabama's allure and its brand that being that big? Because as much as I love Alabama, I understand Georgia as a state is viewed as like a better state, right? I mean, it's just on a national perception. If you were ranking states, Alabama would be in the 40s and Georgia would be in the teens. I mean, probably. Now, but that doesn't mean, I mean, that's not the way I'd rank it. I'm just saying, what do you think it is?
Yeah.
Because Alabama's had a California connection for a while.
It's partly this. I think there is a surprising number of students that go to the University of Alabama from California. And I'm talking about just regular walking around students. There's a surprising number But I think the real reason, as it specifically relates to football, is Bryce Young. I think Bryce, from modern day, made Alabama a cool place to go. And I think Alabama, Bryce at least opened the door for modern day players to consider Alabama. And then there's,
What
this is
about
being,
Tua?
there's been well, Tua's from Hawaii, but
Yeah, but I mean, didn't that help a little bit just
I
being
mean,
that
West
far?
Coast,
Yeah.
West Coast, and I would say Tosh Lupoy, who recruited the heck out of California for and the West Coast, and Tosh is who signed Tua. He signed Najee, Jonah Williams. I mean, Tosh got a slew of California kids to come to Alabama. That opened the door. But then Sark is who landed Bryce Young out of modern day because Sark's kid played at modern day. That's a lot of people don't know that, but that's how that happened. Sark's son. Uh, Living in California with his first wife, Sark's son played at Mater Day, and that's how I think Sark got in the door with Bryce. But Bryce absolutely, I think, made it cool to go to Alabama. And then this sounds like a homer, but once you consider Alabama, what's not to like? I mean,
I'm with you.
I don't even think Alabama fans fully realize the draw of Alabama to high school recruits. I mean, talk about check every box. You're on TV. You're playing for championships. There was Saban. Now they got another profile coach. They put players in the NFL. It's in the SEC. There's opportunity for playing time. Why? Because 20 kids get the portal and eight kids go pro early. I
The
mean, you get on
passion.
the field. The fans are crazy. I mean, we'll have a modified spring game with bigger attendance than a whole lot of FBS programs get in the fall. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, I think once you consider Alabama and then go visit Alabama, and you go in there, I've done the tour of the football building a few times. It's like, and I've been there for media work. It's like Disney. It's Alabama Disney World, in the football building. Uh, but I think Bryce opened the door, and then these other modern day kids are like, hey, well, I'm going to consider Alabama too. And then they look at it and they go, well, why wouldn't I go here? Uh, and it really explains not just the modern day thing, Luke, but Alabama's position in the recruiting rankings over the last several years. They got a pretty good thing going there.
All right. How about Roy again? That's ROY, the app. Hey, you want to talk about help out with recruiting? This is where you go. Attention, locked on Bama fans. Wish you could ever directly support your favorite school? Well, being Alabama, well, be part of their journey with the athletes. Now you can with Roy, the NIL app that puts fans in control. Before Roy, NIL deals were handled behind closed doors, and fans like you didn't have a clear way to directly support the players you love. Now with Roy, that's ROY, you can make a real impact and feel closer to the athletes representing Alabama. With Roy, you get to choose the player you want to support, decide how much you want to contribute, get exclusive content straight from the athletes you back. That's awesome. The best part, if your player transfers, you get your money back. I mean, that's awesome.
That's
So
great.
it's a risk-free way to show your support and make your voice heard. Support your favorite players directly and help shape the future of Alabama sports. Download the Roy, ROY app from the App Store and start backing Alabama athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading the Roy app and supporting your favorite players. Hey, maybe Mark Bowman will be one of them soon, But yeah, maybe some people disagree. There's some people out of state. I mean, I'm sure they love their states or whatever. But my daughter's going to Alabama next year, and she essentially grew up in Ohio, and she went to high school in Ohio, of course, and of course she comes down here to see me all the time and loves Alabama for that. But she just loves Alabama. I mean, we were going nuts during the Alabama Auburn basketball game this past weekend. My 18-year-old and my 8-year-old daughter, we were all just high-fiving and everything. And then she
Who
also
else is from Ohio? Not just your daughter, Cam Calhoun.
Good point.
Well, I was just thinking, oh, Utah, but
Yeah.
Dude's from Cincinnati.
Yeah, he's from Cincinnati. That's right. And then and my daughter also has another friend from her high school, Olentangy High School, going to Alabama. I mean, the reach is there. Now, there is part of me, Jimmy and I always talk about how, I'm with the HSA Radio Network. I love it when local people and local kid does good and all that stuff. But there's something cool about getting a bunch of, you talk about diversity. And it's not always just on a religious or racial or political standpoint. It's geographical. And so I like to have people from everywhere here. And you guess what? Trust me on this. When you're out of state, it costs more. So it's more money for the university. Trust me. I know this. Now, Jimmy, let's talk a little bit about the SEC tournament coming up. Starts tomorrow. And, I do like the fact there are 4 games tomorrow, because didn't it feel like No Child Left Behind games when they were on Wednesday and it was just 2 games and you were like, okay, we got to bring these 4 Nimrods in here, even though they have no shot. But now with 4 games,
yep.
Okay. And maybe it's because the league's so good this year. I'm kind of interested in those 4 games.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I did this, but I'm not saying I'm gonna sit there and watch them from beginning to end. I'm sure I won't, but I'm going to watch a chunk of all 4 Wednesday games. I've never said that before. The SEC tournament is compelling this year, Luke, because there's so many great teams. I mean, there could be 13 SEC teams in the tournament. I doubt there'll be 13, but there could be 13. And gosh, so many, not just NCAA tournament teams, but teams that are a threat to get in the tournament and advance. I mean, Alabama could play Kentucky Friday night, and that's going to feel like a Sweet 16 game. And then they're going to play, hopefully, Florida on Saturday.
No, not hopefully. Hopefully we play somebody other than Florida.
Excellent point. But if it is Florida, that's Saturday SEC tournament. It's going to feel like the Final Four. And then Sunday, if there's Auburn and if there's Alabama, that's going to feel like the national championship game in so many ways. So, I mean, it feels like the SEC tournament isn't launching you into the NCAA tournament. It's launching you into the second weekend and beyond of the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, and I'm looking forward. I think the first game Wednesday is Arkansas and South Carolina. And I'm curious. And I'm going to root for my guy, Nick Pringle.
Yeah, I like Nick Pringle a lot, by the way. I'll tell you what, I would have loved for Nick Pringle to stay one more year, especially now that we know Reitzel wasn't here. But how much better could we have been if we had just a Nick Pringle rim protector, intimidating shot blocker, kind of guy to help out a little bit. It would have been nice to have him one more time. But
fun personality.
Yeah, regardless, and I'm going to say this. I know the tournament doesn't mean much. I mean, it means something for Alabama. If you're really concerned about getting a 1 seed, if Alabama wins this thing, I think the consensus is Alabama's going to get that 1 seed.
If they win the tournament?
If they win the tournament.
Yeah.
I don't care if we get the 1. We're a 1 or a 2. I'm fine. And we're not going to be in Auburn's 1 bracket, and we won't be in Florida's 1 bracket. So
Auburn should be a 1. Auburn should be a 1 period because they won the SEC. They won the toughest conference. They should be a 1 no matter what happens. If Alabama or Florida wins the SEC tournament, they should be a 1 period. And they should be a 1 regardless, either one. But yeah, Auburn for sure. Alabama or Florida, if they win the SEC tournament, for sure. Arguably, even if they don't. And I would even throw Tennessee in there if they win the SEC tournament. I mean, I think that's such an achievement this year. But we'll see. I think the hay is in the barn as far as the selection committee goes before those Saturday and Sundays games.
But what I'm saying is, all that being said, I mean, like, I know it doesn't mean much. I know it doesn't. So I'm saying this in advance because I don't want people to think I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth. I want to win it. I want to win it. Now that it's here, I mean, 3 days ago, I was like, I'm not really worried about it. Almost better to lose early, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm like, okay, let's go win this damn thing. And the reason I think that is because the way we played against Auburn. I'm like, we're kind of on a roll just from that game alone. That game had everything you want. And it created this mindset for me that I'm like, no, let's keep this going. I thought we were out of gas, Jimmy. I thought we were dead in the water. And I thought we needed all this rest. Somehow, some way, we dug deep and got in there. And now I'm feeling so much better. Having said that, if we lose game 1, and if it is Kentucky, I'm not going to say that it's the worst thing that ever happened. Yeah.
Did it last year. Wasn't last
Yeah.
year, didn't they lose on
Yep.
Friday? If
Florida.
I remember right,
Florida.
night. Wasn't it a Friday night game too?
Yes.
It was a Friday night game that they lost. And then, so if Alabama loses early to Kentucky, any Alabama fan that panics over that and go, they're just not ready to play in this NCAA tournament. I mean, you can't remember back just to last year. But that said, up to me, Alabama wins the SEC tournament and enters the NCAA tournament confident as all get out. And that's what I think needs to happen or would like to happen. You want a team full of vicious competitors. Vicious competitors don't want to lose, period. It doesn't matter what the game is. And so I want to see Alabama win. I'm not going to spin it, but if they lose, I'm not going to say, oh, well, now they've got no shot in the NCAA tournament. That's just nuts because I can remember back a simple 52 weeks ago.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be a fun tournament. Looking forward to it. And there's going to be a lot more fun stuff coming up. And we will be back tomorrow with more. And until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.